Accutron Watches present. From New York City, this is the Accutron Show, a time travel through American culture with your hosts, Bill McCuddy, Scott Alexander, and David Graver. Visit AccutronWatch.com and discover the brand that has made American history with an all-new proprietary next-generation electrostatic energy movement. Accutron. It's not a timepiece, it's a conversation piece.
What gets us into trouble is not technology. What gets us into trouble are our values. Like our what we feel is important to do with our lives, to acquire things, to buy things, to extract, to go into competition. Those sets of values versus to work together, to create, to magnify beauty. That's another set of values.
The person you heard at the top of the show is today's guest. She's Shari Frilot, artist, filmmaker, and chief curator of the New Frontier program at the Sundance Film Festival. What does a curator do there? First of all, what do we do here? I'm Bill McCuddy, along with Scott Alexander and David Graver, and this is the Accutron Show.
This podcast is presented by Accutron Watches. Visit our website, accutronwatch.com, and discover our iconic Space View 2020 collection, recreating the stunning visual impact of the original open dial design combined with an all-new electrostatic energy movement. Time just changed again. The Accutron Space View 2020.
Are we here for real, or is this an avatar of David Graver and Scott Alexander?
It's always been an avatar of David.
Yeah.
No one looks real. That good all the time.
And was that smart and gets that. So that means all the free stuff you get is going to an avatar that can't even enjoy it.
I send a lot of things to my digital basement.
Sad story.
Yeah. Today we have a special guest who is at the forefront of everything that's happening in virtual reality, but also how artists are using this new format to try and sell art. It involves
or tell stories.
Yeah, and tell stories. And that's one of my concerns. One of my concerns with virtual reality is it going to take the place of reality?
I don't think it ever will. I mean, there will become a time, and it will be a long time in the future, where the fidelity gets there where you might not want to leave it, but that's a long way off. What we're seeing right now is the birth of a medium. These things happen really rarely, like the birth of cinema. That's right, 150 years ago,
In that birthing period, people, David, are very kind of weary about whether it's there yet. Are we still in a wait-and-see kind of world with virtual reality?
People just need their aha moment. I remember my aha moment. I was at the New Museum for their incubator, and an artist, Rachel Rosen, who's a fine artist. She's a painter, but she's also a VR artist. She put me in a headset and set me in the middle of an explosion. You're standing in the middle of an explosion, and by stepping forward or backward or anywhere around the room, you could control time. You can minimize the explosion. You can destroy everything around you. And that was the first time the apparatus ceased to exist. And I lived inside of a VR story that was something above and beyond what I'd seen in other industries.
So your head exploded, literally.
I think people haven't had a lot of opportunities to get into a VR headset. And when they do...
It's been confined to most of the time people are playing video games when they're in these things.
Right.
Like there's a PSVR, there's Oculus, and most of it's focused on, there's some great experiences, Beat Saber and all these other games. They're delightful, but these artists getting their hooks into this stuff and creating experiences like what David's talking about, something new, something you've never experienced before, something that is literally impossible to experience any other way. Instead of going to a gallery and looking at a painting on a wall, paintings are great, but being able to actually experience something with your mind, your heart, your body that is embodied in 3 dimensions is pretty remarkable.
So I actually think the video gaming generation that you're talking about is ripe for this kind of entertainment. They understand how to put the thing on. They understand that the imagery is happening around them. How they can control it and not control it.
The great thing is what Shari does is it's not gaming and it's not choose your own adventure.
Right.
It's literally fine art. It's film quality VR experiences akin to what you'd find in the Sundance Film Festival. I've been going to a New Frontier since 2015, and I could do another screening on Main Street, or you can hop into her curatorial experience and literally go to another world. I've been on ayahuasca experiences. I've traveled in a pool in Park City, Utah, through space, wearing an Oculus, like going through outer space, wearing a swimsuit and a headset. Like, it's the next level. It is the future.
Okay, he's definitely an avatar. The Shari he's
And
talking
I
about
also.
is Shari Frilot. She works with the Sundance Festival. One of the things I want to know from her is whether or not, especially after the pandemic, are we just going to put on headsets in the future and never go anywhere, never sit down in real theaters with people and have a collective experience? That frightens
Well,
me.
what happened with the pandemic, it hit and we had a certain range of technologies which instantly got boosted. All the video conferencing, virtual work, all that stuff was ready to go. People just weren't ready in their minds. The hardware isn't there in people's homes yet for VR. If this was 10 or 15 years in the future, we'd be in a very different place. It'd be really interesting to see the mindset, because what changed in COVID was the mindset around technology changed, but the hardware just, it isn't as widely distributed as it will, as phones or computers are.
Apropos of all of this, we will talk to her in a Zoom interview, and we will speak to her just before the Sundance Film Festival. By the time you see and hear this, she will have been to the Sundance Film Festival along with Graber, and that's going to happen in person this year.
No, it was actually 10 days ago. It was pushed solely online. Unfortunately, because last year was solely online, Shari had the infrastructure. She had this spaceship. We all put on goggles, and we just all hung out together from the comfort of our own home in a spaceship that was docked on the ISS and looking down at planet Earth.
But these are these moments where technology pushes forward because it's of the necessity. Necessity is what pushes people's minds.
Have either of you been to VR World, the theme park in Flatiron?
No. Is that like Wayne's World?
It's like...
Is it in a basement?
It's like a full-on
It's
theme
excellent.
park.
It's excellent.
It's a theme
VR
park.
on. And you put on like
put on a
laser
headset?
tag, but with goggles?
It's a lot of solo experiences. A lot of you're walking on a tightrope between two buildings in a headset, or you're flying through the sky, real Icarus style, but in a headset strapped down to a moving.
Wow.
I love VR. I really do. I live for VR.
At the risk of having some motion sickness during this interview, Shari Frilot joins us on the Accutron Show right after this.
This podcast is presented by Accutron Watches. Visit our website, accutronwatch.com, and discover our Accutron DNA collection. Reimagined for a new generation, the Accutron DNA combines breakthrough technology, precise engineering, and modern aesthetics to achieve a new level of technical excellence. The Accutron DNA, the new face of time for those who blaze new trails.
Shari, welcome to the Accutron Show. We were talking about the New Frontier program, and I wonder if you could tell us where it came from and how you got involved.
Well, I mean, I am a programmer of the Sundance Film Festival, been selecting films since 1999. And I come from an experimental film background where I used to do a festival called Mix. And so I had this experience of seeing filmmakers tell stories in ways that they needed to expand the form to be able to tell the story. And so they were innovating ways of telling stories. And sometimes that turned out to be taking on new forms of, of technology and creating new technologies. So when I was at Sundance, I right around 2006, 7, YouTube, little thing called YouTube came along, and a lot of the filmmakers that I was dealing with at the festival were poking around YouTube and doing little mini websodes, and so I was just following the filmmakers. That's all I ever do. Is I follow the filmmakers and they tell me where to go. And that's
a lot of
where
guests do
I
that
went.
to us on this show too. They tell us where to go. So that was sort of the crawling before it walked kind of stage for this. And where is it now?
Well, it turned out that, paying attention to this intersection of what was happening with filmmakers and the new technology platforms, paying attention to the art world. And a lot of those artists were being enthralled by the cinematic form, like Miranda July, John Grayson, Isaac Julian, this crossroads ended up being incredibly powerful convergence that continues to radiate. It was like a black hole. Like it just continues to radiate photons of innovation and energy, and really, honestly, a $20 billion industry came out of the frontier in the form of VR. I mean, the prototype for the Oculus Rift was created for New Frontier to be able to show something that Nani de la Peña developed and developed on a military grade VR headset at USC. And they wouldn't let her take that headset to New Frontier and have 50,000 people coming through it. So her and Palmer Luckey created the prototype for the Oculus Rift. And that really just opened up, and it feels like this field continues to open up not only fields of and grounds of creativity, but industry. There's a lot of business out there, that a whole industry field that didn't exist before.
Shari, we first spoke in 2015, and Cool Hunting first covered you in 2013. And since, we've seen the industry grow around this technologically. We've seen VR at-home fitness activities and VR gaming for families. But what you do with New Frontier hones in on the artistry of VR, AR, and mixed reality. Can you talk to me about the importance of artistry and how that is influencing the future of this industry?
And thank you for your question. New Frontier is really looking at the dynamics, that dynamic intersection of film art and new media technology. It happens that one of many things that came out of it were the XR field, right? Augmented reality, things you can do with your phone, virtual reality. But how we got there was because artists decided that they needed to create a new way of telling, Nani de la Peña, creating a new way of telling stories that the tools that she had as a journalist in Newsweek and Time didn't exist. It's the artistry, it's the desire, that creative turbine that leads and compels artists to find a way to tell a story, create a way to say what they have to say, that ends up with something real, something real, something that reaches audiences, that moves audiences. And if it's moving audiences, it's going to move industry. It's going to move, colleagues and bring people to the field. And then that's how the field is generated, by, an artistic vision that is compelling.
Is there a sort of a language emerging for this? I know that, back in the early days of film, you have D.W. Griffith and even Charlie Chaplin, like establishing these filmic languages. And it seems like as VR and AR sort of emerge, are we seeing sort of ways of storytelling or ways of language or sort of forms coalescing around these things where there's conventions and that sort of thing? Or is it still kind of wide open?
It's funny because I often find myself in the language invention business. Because the thing, this field is moving so fast. Our tech, I think one of the reasons I think maybe I was compelled to jump into this intersection and why artists were compelled to jump into it is because the technology at that time, the internet and networked ways of communicating with each other and being with each other and then telling stories was really exponentially growing. And really what we are seeing are familiar technologies being networked and optimized at the very same time. VR is really a suite of technologies that have come together to, in a way that was improved from when it came around in the 90s, right? Mm-hmm. Because the computing power wasn't there. So if you went into VR in the 90s, it was just like, it was really rough. But now that we have these supercomputers called our cell phones, that that technology combines with, different visual approaches to give us technology like VR. There's a lot of talk about the metaverse right now, and that's language that's being invented. I'm always wary about language that is invested in the intention to control.
I'm wary of technologies coming out of Facebook, period.
I'd rather not have Mark Zuckerberg be in charge of the metaverse. Thank you very much.
He's late to the game. Let's just face it. I mean, the metaverse. Way, what was it, 2017, 18? We started calling this landscape a biodigital landscape.
Uh-huh.
And the reason why it really started to gain steam when, remember the Bird? It's still around. Bird, those scooters.
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh.
The Bird scooters, yeah. So I remember seeing Bird scooters for the first time in Santa Monica. I'm like, oh wow, this is cool. This kid with their phone. And then all of a sudden, in about 2 weeks, the Bird was from Santa Monica, which is all the way to the west side on the ocean, to where I live over here on the east side of Los Angeles. I'm like, how did that happen so fast? And I realized that this is a viral activity. This is something that has gone viral, but it's a scooter, but it's gone viral because it actually is a part of a digital network. It is a part of digital landscape. Mm-hmm. And so this is a biodigital phenomenon. So I started to look at my phone, my home screen, and all of the most important applications on my home screen are biodigital. It's something that my body is a part of the circuitry of what this app is. Google Maps, it's getting my body somewhere. Airbnb, it's getting my body somewhere. My body is a part of the circuitry of the app, as opposed to Facebook, where it kind of captures you and keeps you in this digital space.
I've actually had the great privilege of being to a space that I'm going to call your spaceship. I've been to the New Frontier spaceship. I was there last year. I'm looking forward to this year. Is that a biodigital bridge? Is this hub where I can step into VR projects and then return to a sort of holding lounge? Is that a biodigital bridge? An interspace between ours and the other?
Well, you're going to get me talking about something that I'm really sad about right now, because Omicron took away our on-the-ground, in-person activation. And what the biodigital bridge was a window in the spaceship. So if you're there in Avatar, this window was bigger than you, it was like human scale. And you can walk up to this window. And in our venue in Park City, there was also a big giant LED screen where you could walk up to and talk to the people, avatars on the spaceship. And the spaceship can talk to the people from the craft. That was the biodigital bridge.
That's remarkable.
Okay. So without the physical installation, it's virtual to virtual this year.
That's right. It's
okay.
It's still people in their homes. It's still people on their devices. It's something that it's always been, but instead of being in our official festival venues, people are at home.
Well, that's kind of what virtual is all about. I mean, it's odd. I mean, I don't think someday, look, you said a couple of minutes ago, way back in 2017, and that just, I think, underscores how quickly everything is changing here, and how what happened a year ago is going to be completely different a year from now.
There's been 3 versions of the Oculus since then.
Yeah, I mean, you were talking about military grade stuff that hasn't. My question is VR as good for everybody right now, or is there something coming that's going to be even more amazing, like an Apple phone that they come out with every year that has another thing just around the corner? How good is VR now, and how much better is it going to get?
Well, VR now is a whole lot better than it was 5 years ago. And I anticipate it being exponentially better as years come by. I mean, already, if you put on the Quest 1 to the Quest 2, it's so much lighter and the images are better. And and I wouldn't, these technologies and the way that they converge, especially with users using them and artists engaging with them, there might be a quantum leap in the middle of it that we didn't even see, coming. We don't know.
To some degree,
but I do think that we're not in stasis. Let's just say that.
Yeah, the technology keeps getting better. The fidelity keeps getting better. But, when I think about the work that's behind it, is there a way, a great song that's coming over AM radio is still a great song, even though it's scratchy and you might not hear it all. You hear it on FM or you hear it on satellite and the fidelity's higher. But the song's the song. Are there experiences this year that really kind of blew your socks off, or that you feel like it was something you haven't seen before?
Yeah, there are. I saw hundreds of works, and that's not even counting the NFT, deluge that happened on our desks here. But there are, if we're talking about VR, there is one piece. They're all so amazing. But there's one piece on a technological front that was really different. And this is a piece. It's called Gondwana, and it's a 24-hour simulation of the Daintree, which is a tropical rainforest in Australia. And this simulation, it's a three-dimensional, a volumetric simulation that is powered by dynamic climate change. So you go in there at midnight, and you come out at midnight, and you can go in and out, and you can see the Daintree, the environment changing, and you can see time passing. And you can go in there with VR, or you can go in there with your computer, and you can see each other in there as fireflies. But I've never seen a 24-hour dynamic simulation of an environment. And number one, and number two, the first time I went into that environment, I just lost an hour of my life. It was so beautiful. I had no idea I was in a headset for an hour, until my colleague was like, "So should we look at the next one?" It was beautiful. It's transporting. And, to have something like that is tuning in to the climate and our environment, in a dynamic way. These are, once again, artists are converging, state-of-the-art technology with an obstacle or a challenge that our society faces that really feels overwhelming, and really converging these two together in a way that you can then build a relationship, your bodily relationship, to something that seems to be way bigger than you, overwhelming, like the climate change. In this environment, in this piece, Gondwana, you feel like you are connected to the environment around you.
Is that sort of the signature difference between something like film, where it's on a screen, and the immersion of VR? It's that there's a physical almost identification with the space.
It's empathy. It is empathy. That's been my experience. VR is a tool for empathy.
I should tell you about Flat Earth VR. Speaking of empathy, Lucas Risotto, who is such a clever artist. So what Flat Earth VR, he takes on reputation of VR as an empathy machine. And he asks, so if this is a powerful empathy machine, and it is, what does it mean if what's being asked of you is to invest in a vision that is delusional? And so he has made a piece called Flat Earth VR, where you are put in the shoes of a flat earther astronaut, and you hijack a NASA rocket to fly into space with the mission of taking a photo of the Earth exactly as it is, flat as a pancake.
Right.
And it's so clever. But what's so interesting about this experience, it's only 5 minutes, right? It's so rich. But what's so great about it is that he creates a flat Earth that is one of the most beautiful, most compelling visions that you've seen. So you find yourself like, wow, the Earth is as flat as a pancake. It's so beautiful. Amazing.
I have to tell everyone the truth.
To take a photo. I've got to take a photo and bring it back, and you can.
Would that be virtual non-reality? Would that be the big lie?
It comes to question what is reality, right?
You're so good at this. Are we in virtual reality now? Because frankly, it would explain a lot about David Graeber. This is happening, really? Okay. Where will we ever get lost in it? I guess that's the one thing. You know, I see kids that are playing video games all the time, and I just think a virtual reality world, no matter how great the artists are or how responsible it wants to be. I mean, you just talked about a 24-hour commitment for one project. I mean, is there a danger that we could like our avatars better than we like ourselves?
What gets us into trouble is not technology. What gets us into trouble are our values. You know, like our what we feel is important to do with our lives, to acquire things, to buy things, to extract, to go into competition. You know, those sets of values versus to work together, to create, to magnify beauty. That's another set of values. You can take those two sets of values to the same technology, get two different results, two different worlds, two different internets. You know, that's a Web 3.0 is blockchain has. Yeah.
Do you worry at all about those lines getting starker? It seems to me that, you know, there is a digital divide already of technology, sort of haves and have-nots. As the technology for something like VR gets more rarefied, you know, are these experiences that can end up being cut off from a certain part of the public?
Well, you know what's great about the development of this world is that it's shooting in all directions, right? There is one direction that can become more and more rarefied to create this scarcity, to magnify value of the gadgets, the products, you know. And then there's other direction that is more open source and you know, more of a DIY. In fact, the piece called Sugar that's in the lineup this year is a great example of this. This is a dancer who paired up with a couple of really brilliant technologists. This is a dancer during COVID, you know, needed to continue with their practice. So they came up with a way using Mozilla Hubs, which is open source, open to everybody, came up with a gear to capture her dancing body volumetrically in her living room. You know, it's a Raspberry Pi. This is not, you know, state of the art, really expensive stuff. This is accessible technology that, you know, she created this phenomenal experience where collectively 20 people can join this dancer and embark on the transatlantic slave trade, end up in Barbados, learn the history of what happened there, and including the liberation of these slaves. And these are her ancestors. This is a heart story. And so at the end of this, she dances on the slave mill that once was powered by her ancestors who were enslaved. And it's just this beautiful moment, you know, and she didn't spend a lot of money on this. And the rendering, the aesthetic of it looks and feels DIY, but the way that she tells the story, the way that she purposes this technology really speaks to where we can take things, what the world can look like, how important it is important to keep in mind what questions do we bring to what we need from our technology.
One of the things we bring to this technology is our sponsor, the Accutron folks. We will take a break. When we come back, I want to talk to you about mainstream cinema and whether or not VR is going to be integrated into that anytime soon, or whether it's going to remain sort of a niche thing for just certain artists. All of that when we return on the Accutron Show.
This podcast is presented by Accutron Watches. Visit our website, accutronwatch.com, and discover our legacy collection, reviving some of the most memorable Accutron watches from the 60s and 70s. The legacy collection combines timeless design with the technical excellence of Swiss watchmaking, each limited to 600 individually numbered pieces. The Accutron Legacy Collection, inspired by the past, built for the future.
Welcome back to the Accutron Show. We are talking with Shari Frilot, who is enlightening us about the things we put on our heads and go into other worlds. It's VR. It's being obviously used to tell stories in a more compelling way. We're learning that the technology is getting even better and better. And when we took the break, you were talking about a very DIY kind of a dancer that had done something that was extremely personal about slavery. And I wonder if mainstream media is going to embrace this kind of storytelling, not on a DIY level, but on a major level.
Or even on a DIY level.
Or maybe even an independent film level or something that is embraceable for sort of all budgets. When are we going to walk into a theater and sit down with 500 other people and put some goggles on?
Well, that happened in 2016 at the Egyptian. So you're asking the right question about, like, how are these technologies converging and integrating? And if you come to the spaceship at New Frontier, the spaceship itself is a venue. It's actually three venues. There's a gallery, there's a film party where you can attend film premiere parties and receptions for filmmakers. There's a cinema house. This entire spaceship is accessible interchangeably on your computer or your VR headset. So now we're talking about not just stories, we're talking about whole social worlds that you can find. The spaceship happens to be ours. It's a custom-made spaceship, but you could go to VR chat. There's actually a film that we're featuring in the documentary competition called We Met in Virtual Reality. That is about a chapter of a year in COVID and folks who went into virtual reality and found a whole new world, found love, found meaning, mourned, relatives. It's beautiful. But on the spaceship, if you're in there in virtual reality, it's really profound. It's very hard to explain the immersive quality of relating to other people, especially other people that are there for the same reason you're there. You're there for the film festival. You're there, to find your community. To be able to present films in this situation. So we have a cinema house where even in a lockdown pandemic, we can actually come together, gather and watch movies. We can gather and watch artist presentations. We can gather and watch some really cutting edge performances. So, there are two that are really worth mentioning. 32 Sounds is the latest from Sam Green, and documentarian, Oscar nominated. And he is collaborating with J.D. Sampson on this piece. It's a 95-minute production, live presentation, performance of sound and the relationship between sound and how sound connects us and connects us to our environment. This is something that we will be opening the festival with at 4:00 on Thursday. So definitely come and join us there. The other performance that we will be presenting in Cosmogony is in the cinema house. It's called Cosmogony. Now, Cosmogony, this dance troupe in Geneva, has managed to scoop a kind of way to give you live performance before the avatars. I don't know if you have heard about the avatars. The avatars, so ABBA. Mm-hmm. Take a chance on me? Yeah. Sure. They recorded a new album. And ABBA's amazing. They recorded a new album, and they teamed up with ILM X Lab to create avatars of themselves when they were young and svelte. And now they can do live concerts using their avatars. Now, this technology is something that the studio, Cy Gilles Jobin in Geneva, arrived independently and months before. And this is a Cosmogony. Cosmogony is a live dance performance where the dancers are in mocap suits. Their motions are captured in real time and integrated into 3D environments in a way that just delivers this amazing dance performance that goes through time and space and various different landscapes. And at the end of this experience that will happen in Cinema House on the spaceship, you'll have a chance to talk in real time with the dancers from their studio in Geneva.
It sounds, when we talk about virtual shared spaces virtually and then talking about art, I immediately think shared space, art, okay, theater, like live theater, in that same way that you're in the room, you know, you see a play, it's completely different than watching a film or anything else, a live performance that way. Do you feel like we're close to getting those kind of performances in VR? Where they have that same level of sort of effectiveness?
Without us getting up and walking onto the stage ourselves and being a part of it. I mean, I think that's there's so much that's immersive in VR and so much that wants us to sit and watch. And you know, Scott's got a good point. Are we going to see more live, besides dance, are we going to see more live theater this way?
Mm-hmm. It's such a great question. And we only need to look last year to what the Royal Shakespeare Theatre has been doing.
Indeed, it was a stunning setting.
It's a fantastic production called Dream. And it really shows you how, you know, an artist's vision can engage with a technology like VR. And not only think about it as, let's produce something for you to watch in a headset. They're taking on the visual language of 3D, of volumetric imagery, and using it as a camera in and of itself to be able to place dancers who are in mocap suits. You know, they can take that data stream of all those movements and put it inside of images that you can watch on 2D or 3D. So it's these convergences. What artists are doing with these technologies is really kind of incredible. And you know, what might seem to be a prototype that is simply fascinating may very well become an industry in another, you know, in the next year, which we saw that happen, you know, with Oculus.
You've spoken of stories of gravity and some of levity and some of empathy, and we've addressed animation, documentary, 360-degree filmmaking, but you're a curator. What grips you? What is the through line for your curatorial vision for a festival?
You know, with the films, as with New Frontier, for Sundance, I fully recognize that I am selecting films and new media works for a film audience. And, you know, I read the paper every day. I'm a citizen of the planet. I'm a citizen of this country. And I have a personal relationship to, you know, given what I read and what I experience and how I'm treated and who I am, is very much bound up in how I respond to works that come across my desk. And I trust that if I have a response to this work, there are a lot of people out there that are like me that will also have a response to this work. So I really trust my instincts on stuff like that. It comes from a very basic personal place. You know, my gold reference for curation and selection. I'm lucky enough to work with a team on the film side of, 9 other people who have their own compasses. And it's just really amazing to have conversations. We're all really different. We all have different standards and we have different things that are important, different priorities and agendas for ourselves. And I always grow as a person having these conversations with them. But it's personal, you know, I don't really take curation as something of a place of authority, because it's not. It's a personal thing. And I'm sharing these selections in a way that for me, I'm sharing my humanity with my audiences, and I trust that it will either be relatable or it might expand their vision, ask them to consider something that they might not have considered before, and something that we can talk about.
Bill touched upon something earlier about like the mainstream influence or the potential mainstream impact of Sundance in VR. And I know Darren Aronofsky premiered Spheres with Sundance, and that went on to sell for 7 figures. Were you shocked by that amount of money going toward an artistic VR experience?
Well, at that time, there was a lot of money going into VR. When we showed the Oculus Rift, we kind of premiered it as a technology in 2013? And then it was picked up for a couple $1 billion by Facebook about 3 months later, 14. This technology is powerful. It's very compelling. It makes you feel like something new. It's revelatory. And it's also connected to a very powerful and lucrative network technology called the cell phone. So it's really compelling to put money into this. And a lot of money went into it. And some of it was misguided in terms of on the investor side, because they saw this thing that was so amazing. It was just so obvious, the potential, right? That they put a lot of investment in it. But it was only like 2-3 years old. It's like, putting your 5-year-old to go out, put them out and pay the rent. It wasn't, it's an experimental, it was emerging technology. And now we're starting to see, the meat and the bones of what VR specifically can be. Now there are millions of headsets out there. The sales are growing. Facebook, who owns the most sophisticated VR headset, is now putting a stake into the metaverse, where even more money is going into this. Again, it's healthy to see this kind of activity, this enthusiasm, this investment. We just have to be very careful about where our values lie in this landscape, so that this growth, this development, of the spectrum of our humanity actually is working for our humanity and not binding us as a resource.
I'm simply curious as to the longest period of time you've spent in a headset.
I think it was Gondwana.
Oh, really?
Because I kept going in. It's that piece is you can go in and out of it, right? So I spent an hour, and then I did okay, I have to stop this. I got to go back and do my work, and then
there's no virtual
bathroom.
bathroom.
Go back in. Huh?
There's no virtual bathroom. You have to get out of there occasionally.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah. That has not been invented yet. Virtual bathroom. It probably was Gondwana, because it really was just an effortless experience. And also the spaceship too. I find that I'll go in there for a tech check, and I'll watch a feature film inside of Cinema House to see. And then I'll go to Film Party, and I'll meet with my team, and I'll stay there for a long time. It is so beautiful and peaceful. Honestly, I just stopped counting the time, so I guess that's my answer. Long enough for me to lose track of time.
Are there experiences at the other end of that spectrum where there's, a lot of art has to do with making people uncomfortable? Are there experiences in VR that try to accomplish that?
Well, certainly Flat Earth VR is one of those
Right.
films when you're like, I really actually believe in this Flat Earth fantasy.
It seems like there's so much power over what you're seeing and feeling and sensing. It seems like it has even more potential for creating, like you look at a Francis Bacon painting and you might go, oh, that makes me feel a little queasy.
Oh, yeah. Well, for me, that line of inquiry really gets into the responsibility of the medium, because the medium is directly engaging your proprioception, just kind of where you place, where you identify yourself physically.
Right.
It's part of the power of it, but you can do things irresponsibly that can make you just puke your guts out. So, fortunately, I enter less and less these kinds of experiences. I think artists and the folks who are in the business of making VR know not to do this. That's a no-fly zone. what's really compelling are artists who take that power of transporting your body inside of a situation and then give you some bad news, right? And then ask you, and the information that you have in your body, ask you to respond to it in a different way, right? In a certain sense, that's what Nani de la Peña was doing to begin with, asking you to reconsider, to feel the fact that this guy is hungry and fell out in a way that's different than when you have read it. There's a piece that we're showing this year called "This Is Not a Ceremony," made by Colin Van Loon's Blackfoot, Northern Territory in Canada. And this piece tells a story, really rough stories of what is to be Indigenous man growing up in Canada. A couple of stories, some rough stuff happens to these men. But he does this in a way that you are being asked to physically show up and listen to these stories. You're being asked to witness, and you're also being asked to see the redemption and to take responsibility for witnessing this, and not as a part of an entertainment experience, but to hold this information and share it with those when you come out of that stuff.
Well, you physically showed up for us. We appreciate it. Before I let you go, though, before you came, we were talking about this, and it's my big concern. I think in a pandemic, we can use virtual reality to attend plays like he's talking about or movies like you were talking about. But my concern is, and my question for you is, will this replace the brick and mortar experience? Will we eventually just put something on to go to a Broadway play, or will we all sit in a movie theater again together and react to something as a group?
I think the world is wide and there's room for all of it. And we've learned this, TV did not replace radio, video did not replace film. The internet, gave us YouTube, but we still go to the movies. And now we can watch movies on the internet, but we still like to go into the theaters. I mean, I think there's just room for it all. And, now we can go to a theater in VR, with something like big screen, or come to the spaceship. I think people are really open to the full range of innovation and new forms. They're always open to stories in any form. There's no reason to think about it in a way of scarcity. I think it's an abundant landscape.
Well, thanks for joining us in our little landscape here on the Accutron Show. Shari, you've been an incredible guest, a look at the future, and we will beam us aboard anytime. We'll come and visit the spaceship.
love to take you to the cantina.
Thanks.
Thanks for having me. This has been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Accutron Show. To listen to all of our shows, visit accutronwatch.com. To learn more about the world of Accutron, follow us on Instagram at AccutronWatch and subscribe to our podcast. From New York City, until next time, Accutron time.